So in this video, I'm going to go over why headers, or in this case a header, is beneficial and helps your car performance-wise, even fuel efficiency-wise. It's just all around good for your engine, and how they're different. They can be fine-tuned and changed up to help your application specifically. You've got your primaries, you've got your collector, and the diameter of your... This is basically a long collector. Sometimes the collector is where it actually flanges up to the exhaust system. Anyways, there is a lot of variations and changes that can be made to a header to be specifically for your car. Before I get into that, the main benefit of a header is the fact that it flows better, it's less restrictive, and the longer primary tubes give a scavenging effect. The stock manifold, there's no long primaries like that. Let me show you this 2JZ NA application, for example. Here's the stock manifold, right? Look how close these little primaries are. So when the exhaust pulses come out of the head, they're very high pressure exhaust pulses that come out, and they actually fight each other as they're trying to go out and down, you know, and exit the car. These primaries are so short and stubby that it doesn't know to go back and out. The exhaust, it does try to take the path of least resistance, but it is actually kind of regurgitating. The exhaust, if you can imagine, flows this way. As this one comes out, then it takes that with it and goes out. They're so short that the pulses fight each other. That's not good. That's more restrictive. So that's why the long primaries are good, because it gives the exhaust pulses time to travel before the next one fires off. Not that it's in that order, you know, different firing orders also, you know, require different length tubing, but this is just getting it down to basics. So the extra long primary gives the exhaust pulse time to go, and what happens is it actually sucks the next pulse down with it. It creates a vacuum in the primaries that actually helps scavenge the next exhaust pulse. Okay, so what I'm trying to demonstrate here is if I blow air through this with my vacuum, the scavenging effect wants to pull air from the other primaries that connected to that primary. So I've been trying to find things that shows up on camera because it honestly shoots it out too fast. So I'm going to use this piece of torn up glove, see if you can catch that shooting out the exhaust. So like I said, I'm going to blow air through this, and it's so efficient, it's going to go ahead and pull the air from this primary and shoot it out. Sorry if you can't see it on camera, it does happen pretty fast. Yeah, basically that's the scavenging effect. So with the stock manifold, the primaries are so short together that it doesn't have enough time to want to pull the exhaust pulses out from the other primaries. The exhaust pulses are going to be fighting each other, and they don't have enough time to travel individually to be able to pull the next one through, if that makes sense. The longer the primary, the more beneficial the scavenging effect is. So that's really the main benefit of a header. That's why it flows better. I noticed in other countries they actually call these extractors. I thought that was a funny name for a header, or headers for like places in Australia and other places you call these extractors, but that's really what they do. Once you put an aftermarket header, they extract the exhaust pulses out the way they're designed. Okay, now that we kind of know how they work and how they are beneficial, the things that can be changed to be, you know, beneficial to your application specifically, you can change the diameter of the primaries, the flange length, and the diameter of the collector. I'm sorry, I think I called this flange, but the collector length. Everything can be fine-tuned to your specific application. And when you step up the primary diameter, it shifts the RPM band in the higher RPMs. The more flow, the less restrictive it is, the more it tends to shift the power band higher in the RPM range. Now with smaller engines like your 4-cylinders and 6-cylinders, you're not going to have very large diameter piping because they don't have that much low to mid-range torque to begin with. But you'll notice the larger you get in displacement, your larger engines, such as V8s for example, you can afford to increase the diameter of your primaries. You can afford to have an increased diameter collector. You can step, all that gets larger and larger with the more torque and the more cubic inches you have, because they have so much more low to mid-range torque. They can afford to give up a little bit of that and shift it upwards in the higher RPM. Whereas your smaller engines, they don't have that much to begin with, so they can't really afford to lose that low to mid-range torque. So it's not going to be a drastic diameter in these piping. But you know, depending on what you're building your application for, you know, you can usually there's several options out there. Like I'm very familiar with like LS platforms. You can have 1 3/4 primaries, 1 7/8, and it even goes as far as 2-inch primaries. So basically, like I said, the larger the motor, you know, it could be more specific to what you're building your car for. If you feel like you don't have a lot of mid-range torque, you obviously don't want gigantic primaries because it's going to make it even worse. So yeah, so that being said, you know, that's one of the main ways you can fine-tune the header, you know, is primary diameter. And from there you can fine-tune it with collector length and the diameter of the downpipe. That all is similar. You know, the better the flow, the more it shifts it to the higher RPM range. So on top of that, what it's made out of, the quality of the metal is going to mainly just affect the sound. Your higher quality manufacturers will have thicker metal, which actually, believe it or not, makes a big difference on how it sounds. It might sound weird, but thicker, higher quality metal and building materials helps transfer the sound from the engine to the rest of the exhaust system. Your cheaper manufacturers will have thinner metal, and you'll tend to get more engine noise. You'll hear it more under the hood, and it's less efficient at transferring all the noise out the exhaust system. So if you have like a cheaper header, you might want to wrap it. That might help insulate some of the sound and make it, you know, sound better, I guess. Transfer some of the sound out the exhaust. Yeah, that's probably what I'm doing in this situation, because this is a cheaper header, I'm sure you can tell.